Hi everyone, this is your favorite film critic Jay or Jailan Salah as you formerly know her. Today I have a recurring guest, one of my favorite friends on the internet in the entire world. I just love her, Megan Kearns. She is a cornerstone of not just the Women in Session Film podcast, but also the main show, the In Session Film podcast. We all love her, we all cherish her opinion and her presence. Thank you for coming again, Megan.
Oh my God, thank you. You're going to make me cry. That's the loveliest introduction. Thank you. I'm so delighted. I love talking with you. You know that. You know I adore you. So
Yeah,
this
I
is an
know.
utter treat. I'm so
Don't I
excited.
know?
Yeah.
I just love our energy together, Megan and I, and we've been on multiple, countless Women in Session Film podcasts. But sometimes there's a topic that feels like it's our topic. And today we're
Mhm.
going to tackle
Mhm.
something that feels like it's Mount Everest, like it's this very juicy, sexy, lovely, but also scary topic. And it's Coralie Farjah's cinema. Coralie Farjah's cinema, only two feature films, both of them are kind of connected but also different from one another. One of them is a revenge flick that kind of like flips the gender coin, and the other is a body horror that is not only about body horror. I was interested to talk about Coralie Farjah after Megan mentioned that there was an article talking about The Substance, her latest booming film getting multiple Oscar nominations, a Cannes prize, kind of word, that there were elements of motherhood and being a daughter in the substance. So I was like, okay, we didn't discuss that before. I feel like I need to ruminate on this more. So, Megan, what do you think of Coralie Farjah as a filmmaker?
Oh my God, I love her. She's one of my favorites. I didn't get to gush about her as much as I would have liked on our recent Women in Session episode talking about women directors and our favorites, but she is definitely one of my favorites. I saw Revenge back in, I want to say 2017 when it came out. It might have been 2018, but I saw it
Oh,
at a film fest in Boston and I was blown away. I had such a visceral reaction to it. And I think that's the thing is that I think visceral is one of the words that describes her films, her filmmaking prowess so perfectly because it is such an experience watching her work. And I loved Revenge. I loved the colors. I loved the action. I loved the horror. I loved, you mentioned the inversion of tropes, and I loved that. I loved how it flipped the male gaze on its head and then becomes the female gaze. And it was just such an incredible experience. I'm like, who is this filmmaker? I need more. And that was it. There was just this one film. So when The Substance came out, I was ecstatic. And I saw that when it came out. I saw that in London, and I had a different experience with that film. Didn't know if I liked it or not at first because I had, again, such a visceral reaction, but it was a different kind of visceral reaction. It was, I don't want to say disgust, even though that film definitely deals with feelings of shame and disgust quite well, but it didn't feel triumphant in the same way that Revenge did. And I think that really bothered me. And so over the course of several months, I was grappling with this and I couldn't stop thinking about the film. And it kept like, wiggling its way into my mind and into my consciousness. And I kept thinking about it and ruminating on it. And I ended up loving it. So now I love it. But it took some time. And I think that I kind of appreciate it more because I didn't love it right away in a weird way. But what I love that both films do so excellently, they do a lot of things excellently, and they make a fantastic double feature. They explore women's bodies in such an incredible way and those societal expectations of women's bodies and how women's bodies are constantly subjugated, constantly scrutinized, constantly judged in patriarchal society and but also women's rage. And I read this great interview with Farja, and she said, I don't know if she said or the interviewer, but they were talking about how the violence what in Revenge was external, but the violence in The Substance was more internal and like focused on oneself. And violence is a word that comes up over and over and over in Farjah's interviews when she talks about the substance, like the violence that women experience, violence about their bodies, violence about living in this world, the violence that she wanted to depict on screen to get out of her own head about feeling her feelings of aging and sexism and misogyny. And so I think she does that exceptionally well. I love that she takes the influences from other filmmakers that she respects and loves, and she takes those images and those visual metaphors and puts her own spin on them and does something really unique and really bold. And so I just love her.
I
Sorry,
agree.
I just talked for a very long time.
I wanted you to talk. I seriously just wanted you to give me your full opinion. I just left you on purpose, girl. So there will be lots of moments like that. Be prepared. Be prepared. So for
You
me,
got it.
I adore the sense of decay that Coralie Farjah's women
Yes.
feel or undergo with their bodies. In Revenge, it's like a death kind of cathartic experience where she kind of dies and then is reborn, kind of like a phoenix. And then
Mm-hmm.
here, you have the bodies decaying, but they still want to exist. Both women are fighting for
Mm-hmm.
existence, but I feel like these are not only two women, two separate women, or it's like an other coming out of her body in the substance, but more of probably two parts of you that want to coexist at the same time. Because I feel like as women, we go through a lot of stages in our lives where there's a part of us that is aging and a part of us that just wants to feel alive and feel young. And it's about
Mm-hmm.
expectations or being surrounded by the wrong group of women at some point or having, like generational trauma or things that are predisposed to you from, like women in your family or even women your age who haven't lived your life, had completely different experiences. So there are two forces inside you that are polar opposites that are fighting for survival. And this is part of how I saw it in the substance. So, what do you think of the sense of decay to the female body that she depicts sometimes quite cruelly in the substance, but in the revenge, it was more of a, like, yay moment, like a girl power moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great question. So yeah, in Revenge, it does feel like rah rah, which is I think what I absolutely devoured. I was like, yes, give it to me, give it to me. And it feels so cathartic. And, Jen, the protagonist, has this horrible violation happen to her. And she is transformed, she is reborn, symbolically as well as physically, like literally. And like whether it's the phoenix rising and you have the ashes, and even when she's in that cave and she's like branding herself and it feels very womb-esque, and then she comes out of that. So yeah, I love that. I love that we see the decay. I love that she gets dirtier and grimier as the movie goes on, as like blood is like caked into her hair and she becomes like a brunette almost because there's so much blood in her hair and blood on her body and there's dirt everywhere. And I love seeing that. That feels so grimy and gritty, but it feels like it very much makes sense. She's so stereotypically perfect before and very much like, poster child for femininity. And then she becomes something really raw and different, which is really incredible to witness. But I think that's why I had such a different reaction in a negative way to the substance initially, because there were so many grotesque things happening to Elizabeth and Sue's and then Monster Eliza Sue's body. And it does feel so cruel. There's definitely a cruel streak. And it's funny because I've read some of my favorite film critics talk about it, and they talk about how the movie is cruel to Elizabeth, cruel to Eliza Sue. And I don't think that's the case. I think it is cruel, but it's a societal cruelty. It's not the movie necessarily being cruel. Although I think you can make arguments, of course, for both. But I really have come to appreciate the decay with Elizabeth's body and then with Monster Eliza Sue. But it was hard, I think, because it's as I age and I'm getting to an age where my body is very much rapidly changing in ways that feel very much beyond my control. that's exactly what this film is about. It's about, and I'm not saying anything revelatory. Farja has said that herself in interviews, that it's about the violence of losing control. And I think that is what's so hard for me personally. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that, but I think that's what was so hard for me watching this on screen. It was so much of it was a visual manifestation of what I felt was happening internally and and externally in my body. Like things that my body are doing, like that I just cannot control and that were so different than when I was in 20s. And so I think it was a really hard experience because I had to do a lot of self-reflection on myself, after watching this movie, and I had to reconcile, like, why is this movie bothering me? Why is it getting under my skin this way? Why am I having this kind of strange reaction to it? And really, it was my own reflections on myself and my own body and the disgust I would feel about my body not being as, stereotypically desirable to some sector, some gays.
Yes,
So, yeah,
I
but no, the decay
absolutely.
I think is incredible. And not
I
just like, I think the practical effects are amazing, like from a filmmaking perspective, but also just so much of what it means on this deeper level.
I love this analysis so much, Megan. Oh my God, and it's such so eye-opening and revelatory. Seriously. What I loved about the substance in particular is something that I don't know if you can relate to or not, but I have been in this collective group of feminine toxic energy where they had a
Mm,
particular antagonism toward a particular younger actress, model, slash, blah, 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 for particular reasons. And because these were such great friends to me, and we would have a lot of great time talking and having fun, I found myself getting sucked into an abyss of let's be mean about this girl. Let's say awful things about this girl because of
mhm,
particular things that I was always thinking, well, I don't think like these people. I'm a feminist writer, I'm a
mhm,
poet. I never think about this. Yes, all women, solidarity. But then I realized from just replaying our conversations in my mind that I was using particular terms that they were using in describing this young girl, which immediately brought to my mind the Elaz Sue dilemma or the conflict or the
mhm,
dichotomy of is it youth versus aging, or is it, like the maiden, the mother, the crone analogy that it exists and sometimes exists together in the same woman's body and soul, because there
mhm,
are parts of us that are aging while other parts of us are very young and youthful. And yes, our bodies will always change as we grow older, but there are parts of us that might not be changed or might retain that childish energy and keep it very sacred and safe from other hands. And then when my friendship with these women ended, I kind of looked back at myself and had to tell myself, you shouldn't look, you have to be honest with yourself. This was wrong of you. You should not be that
mm,
woman because when you were younger, you were in a position, and I was in a workplace that was like 98% women, and they were kind of judging me in a way, in particular aspects that as a young woman, I felt attacked. I felt very awful. I felt ashamed. So, am I turning into one of these women, or did this collective toxic energy, succulent and lovely like honey, but laced with cyanide, suck me in
mm,
and get me to take out some of my frustrations of the things maybe that I didn't accomplish at this girl's age, or maybe things that I thought she doesn't deserve them because of things that in my mind were like, wow, this is too much. She shouldn't have this, shouldn't have that. So it made me reflect on my own too, and made me realize that the cruelty that women have against other women, especially in that scene when Elizabeth was looking at Sue when she was in that interview. And at the same time, instead of saving herself, she was actually destroying herself while criticizing her and making fun of her and saying all kinds of nasty things about her. And Sue was kind of like titillating, like her youth, like in your face, as if she knew that Elizabeth is looking at her now. So it was just like horrible and very, I feel like toxic, but also it's draining of your true feminine energy, which is supposed to be pure and retained and kind of like nurtured to bring out the best in you. So I just,
mhm.
I want to know if you have you ever had like similar incidents or been exposed to the idea of, like, yes, we all think of feminine friendships and solidarity as the best thing that could happen to us. But what about the darker side of this, which sometimes leads us to be cruel to other women who have done us no harm, but because of that energy where you feel like we have the right to be bullies, we have the right to be mean. What do you think?
Yeah, I have not had that experience per se, turning it outward to other women. And it always kind of, it's funny hearing you talk about the experience of like talking about certain actresses and that I've heard many women that I love and admire, have these really catty things to say about actresses that I feel like would never be said about male actors.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, so that I've definitely witnessed. But what you're talking about, I have not, like, not in that exact way, but yes, I have experienced that in a kind of slightly different way, in that I have had friendships with women, like really close, intense friendships, where it ends up turning competitive with each other in kind of this. I don't know if they feel it's toxic. I feel it's toxic because, there's something to be said where sometimes relationships with other people can push you to be your best self or push you to be better. And that's great. But when it turns competitive and you're trying to like one up each other, that like, what are you doing? Why are you competing with someone that you love and care about? It doesn't make sense to me. And so that has felt really toxic to me. And so in that way, yes, I definitely had a similar experience where I've had to step back and be like, what are you doing? Like it's just, or being kind of gossipy and not gossip. Sometimes
We
I feel
love
like
gossip. I love
I
gossip,
know, I
but
do too. And I feel
exactly.
like we collectively, kind of look down and denounce gossip, but gossip can be a lifeline. Like it can save you, when you talk about
Yes,
like, dangerous relationships and,
exactly.
and predatory men and things like that.
And also
So I don't,
celebrities who are like, like just
oh
saying
God,
stupid
yes,
things and being
exactly.
awful and disconnected
Yes.
from, like regular people or just doing shitty things and
Yes.
claiming to be martyrs. And here, oh my God, get yourself out of my face. Yes. Like you're like, no,
Totally.
you are not a
So yeah, so
martyr.
I want to be
Whatever.
clear. I don't mean gossip in that way because those
But
are all very beneficial. But I mean in the way where I feel like kind of similarly like what you were talking about, where it's like, well, why does that person have that? Why did they get that promotion? Or why did they get that job? Or why did they have that, you know, relationship? Like, feeling like, do they even deserve it? And I'm like, well, that's like it's just it can be such a petty, toxic thing.
exactly.
So yeah, I've definitely experienced that. But yeah, but I feel like it's more kind of that competition that I've felt. Either somebody feeling competitive with me or me feeling competitive with someone else. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like it's just destructive. It's not beneficial in any way, shape, or form. So
100%. I also read in an amazing article that was reviewing the substance from a completely different point of view that I didn't even realize was possible. A woman was talking about being an addict to plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery,
oh.
and that you guys don't understand, we are addicted to the pain. So
Mm,
to me, it felt like, okay, I don't really like the idea of someone transforming their face just to look younger or, like thinner or going through extreme lengths to feel good about themselves and maybe make everyone feel like, wait, we should be in that shape. We should look like that. We should have that. But then I also realized that sometimes you harbor on cruel, on judging people when you are not in their shoes. Like, I would never understand the idea or the feeling of an aging actress who was once known for her immense beauty. I've never been in that woman's shoes. So instead of trying to understand that position and kind of like have empathy for whatever hardship or madness that is going on inside her, or that relentless search for, I want to look, I want to feel desired, I want to feel pretty, I want to feel feelings that she used to have in the past. And maybe like, okay, I've had really similar experience, uh, but on a smaller level of always being, like a very cute girl and always being admired on a family level for a particular thing about me. And then weird old women from the family came with a suitor. And I was like in a terrible position. So I was like, well, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't know. And then they called me, and I thought they were like, yeah, like blah, 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 there will be an whatever meeting. No, they called me to tell me that I actually look terrible. And oh my God, what happened to you? And when
Oh
this
my
man
God.
saw you, he was like, whoa, what is this woman? And I never thought in my life that, like, I thought I would have whatever comments said to me, anything, but someone to call me aging. And they said the meanest comments ever. There were comments about my breast, there were comments about my face, there were comments about my hair, my style of clothing.
Oh
It
my
felt like
God.
I was on a meat rack being cut by scalpel by these women.
Hmm.
And I remember the moment that I just turned off the call, I panicked like for instance, like, oh my God, what should I do? I can't be like this. I can't be seen like this. But then I realized, yeah, I retained my, like fighting energy and my vibrant spirit, like fuck these people, and I kind of like had a completely different comeback.
Yes.
But then I realized, well, you never know what it's like for this actress who was in a position of being admired by millions. And now executive producers are telling her, well, you're too old. Well, and she sees in the eyes of people that she is changing, even though the poor woman is probably our age or maybe a little bit older. So, how do you know? Have you been in her place? Have you had her plight? Have you had her suffering? Do you even know why would she go on a relentless search to look younger? That this is something that is on her mind constantly 24/7. You don't know her. You've never been in her shoes. You've never
Hmm.
had that intense pain. So I think Elizabeth was portrayed beautifully, of course, by Demi Moore.
Oh, yes.
Demi made you feel like that desperation inside her, that pain, that drive. Even if it's eating me inside, even if it's destroying me, I will still seek it. Even if it turned into this, like it's as if this is an embryo that came out of me and it's no longer attached to me. But I still want this version to be beautiful. Kind of like when you have the crazy, like beauty queen moms or beauty pageant moms who see
Hmm.
in the girl an extension of themselves and they drive the poor
Yes.
girl crazy. So for me, it's a very tricky thing to portray or to put on screen, but it's also kind of cathartic. This is why it feels like it's in a way um, like labor. You go into this movie and you enter the womb, and then you come out a different woman on the other side. Maybe it's not a very comforting experience or it's disturbing in a way, but it's still
Hmm.
important.
Hmm. I could not agree more. First of all, I just have to say, I don't want to say like anything bad about these women because,
No,
I
they
don't
deserve.
know. I was gonna say I don't know how much you care about them, but I kind
I
of want to say
don't.
fuck them because
Yes.
they're terrible. That's horrible. I can't like I've had friends tell me some pretty horrific things that family members have said to them about their appearances, and it's always disgusting, and that might be the most heinous just because like hearing a litany of all the things that are quote unquote wrong with you is disgusting. And for what it's worth, there's nothing wrong with you. You're beautiful, you're amazing, and you're gorgeous, and they're lucky to even be graced with a moment of your presence because it's horrible.
Oh,
But
thanks,
that's the
babe.
thing, of course. But that's the thing is that we as a society, and I mean like a global society, because obviously there are many societies, but we collectively deconstruct women. We criticize their
Yes. Thank
appearances.
you.
It's so reductionist, and we just reduce them to their body parts. We reduce them to their sexual desirability from a very hetero male gaze,
Yes.
and which is gross and differs obviously from a female gaze or from a queer gaze. And it's disgusting. It's like, why is our only value in how many men sex with us or find us attractive or how useful we are? Having said that, I absolutely understand Elizabeth's plight. I mean, not from the angle of an actress, because I'm not an actress and never have been, but
We'd be probably rebels. Like we'd be smoking bongs and just, like chilling. We wouldn't
I
be
know,
that kind of actress. We'd be like
no,
independent movies, doing like crazy artsy things. Like I can see us as actors.
that sounds fun. But yeah, but like, I you said earlier about aging, and this is something I haven't actually said this in public, because it feels scary to say. It feels weird to say because I have always, and this is an awful thing to admit, I've always prided myself on people thinking I'm way younger than I am. And like I'll joke, like I have friends who I joke with and I call myself a hag or crone and like because sometimes it feels that way. But then other
Yes.
times I feel like I'm a teenager, and you
Yes.
kind of it depends, it vacillates. But when people like ask me my age, as when I was younger, I mean like 10 years ago, like I would proudly say my age. And people would always be like, "Whoa, you look so much younger." And I would take that as a badge of honor and really like internalize that, like, "Ooh, I did
But I'm
good.
like
I
that,
look
by the
young."
way. I'm like that, and
What?
my mom is like that. But my mom always looks
Yeah.
younger than her age, so it works for her.
Yes.
For now, I feel like it's not the same. But I'm like you, like, hey, how old do you think I am? So when someone
Yes.
says a
Yes.
different age, sometimes I go like, nailed it. But it's
Right?
actually like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I get obsessed about it. And I have been obsessed for decades with, you know, anti-aging skincare and sunscreen. And like, I make sure, like, I mean, I'm very pale and I like burn in the sun. So I have to be diligent with sunscreen, especially living in a tropical climate. But I am obsessive about it. And I am constantly reading about what's the latest cream and what's the best sunscreen
See,
and what's the best thing. And
yes,
it's all to look younger. And there's something to be said for wanting to be healthy and wanting to, feel your best. And part of that, I guess, is looking your best because we inhabit our bodies.
exactly.
Our
Why
bodies are
not?
part of us. Right, exactly. And there's no shame, in that pivot. Sidebar, I think there is something really messed up about the fact that I am obsessed with looking young. I know that. And so I don't do Botox. I don't do fillers. I don't do plastic surgery or anything like that. And again, I say that and I'm not saying that like, oh, I don't do them. Like that's something to be proud of because I don't think there shouldn't be shame in someone who does that because I understand why they do it. I understand that
Exactly.
compulsion because there is so much pressure internally, individually, societally to look a certain way. But I know that feeling of pressure because I am obsessed with youth and obsessed with looking young and looking as young as I can, as long as I can. And the thing that I realized I said this, I alluded to this, and then I never actually said it out loud. The thing is that and I didn't know it at first because there's not enough literature about this. There's not enough advice about this, but I've entered perimenopause and I didn't even realize it at first
Yeah.
because all of the symptoms, very few doctors will talk about with you. And I had a doctor and she mentioned it kind of casually, like, oh, well, that's a symptom of perimenopause. And I'm like, I'm sorry, wait, what? And because like I thought of like my grandmother and her like talking about hot flashes, and like I forever associated hot flashes with, oh, that's what happens in menopause, and you stop getting your period, and then that's it, it's over.
Yes.
you know, and then you're old. And it's like, no, there's like a whole buildup. There's like 10 years of buildup where all
Yes.
of these various symptoms happen.
That's why
And
you're on the rise and the like it's like
yes,
an ebb and tide. This is why. Exactly. Because you're in
yes,
that stage. Uh-huh.
exactly. And it's like and like my body is doing weird things and feels so out of control. And so watching that movie kind of hitting at that time, I'm like, oh, this is hitting way too close to home. So, yes, I definitely can understand Elizabeth's compulsion to be destructive in the vain attempt of vanity and of youth. So, I don't get it to the extreme, of course, and the fame elements, but I definitely understand her feelings.
I feel like Coralie takes the extreme and puts it in our face because it's rarely that extreme, but she just magnifies our fears, our insecurities, our pain, our discomfort, and puts it like, amplified, like times 10.
Yes, yes, yes. And
100%.
that's what I love about her. And I love that she's so in your face. I love that she's so visceral. I love that she's not subtle. And I love a subtle filmmaker. I love subtle films, but I love that she's not. And I think sometimes I hear critics and audiences talking about a film or a filmmaker and kind of talking about it negatively if it's too obvious or too overt and doesn't have subtlety. And I get that conversation to some extent, but at the same time it doesn't mean that she doesn't have a lot of analysis or deep reflection happening. She's so thoughtful and analytical about women's lives and women's bodies and her own experiences and filmmaking and these images and imagery, and she's taking all of that and putting it all together to craft an experience. And I think that that's something that's really incredible.
Okay, because you mentioned the motherhood aspect of it on
Yeah.
our episode of
Yes,
Women in
yes.
Session, and I've always had this very complicated and complex relationship with motherhood. So I
Hmm.
want to know, what was that angle? Because I feel like, oh my God, I didn't see this before, and I want to hear more about it.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't see it either, even though it's funny when I was reading a lot of behind the scenes and interviews in preparation for our conversation, I saw terms like the birth of Sue from Elizabeth Spine. And it's funny because I had never thought of it as a birth in kind of the traditional sense, but it 100% is. And so what I had seen, there's this professor, Duncan Barlow, on TikTok, and he's doing kind of this mini lecture series on TikTok about horror literature, but he's talking a lot about films too. And he talked about in one of the episodes he did, or mini lectures, depending on what you want to call it, he did this one on Barbara Creed and the monstrous feminine, which talks a lot about motherhood and the different stages of motherhood. And I have read Barbara Creed before, kind of doing film theory, especially feminist film theory, but I'd never heard it in relation to the substance. And so I thought that was really interesting. And it was talking about the scene of her coming out of her spine, of Sue coming out of Elizabeth's spine, but it was also talking about how it relates to the monstrous feminine kind of at large. And he ended up quoting Corley Farjat, who said, ironically, it's when she's totally deformed and monstrous that she doesn't care what she looks like. In fact, it's the only time she looks in the mirror and kind of likes what she sees. And this is from an interview with Vogue that she did. And then he ties it to motherhood, and he also tied it to the witchy act of deceiving and disrupting the patriarchy by her taking this black market drug. Um, but yeah, I found that so fascinating that he was talking about uh, these elements of birth, but also transformation, but also how this monstrosity, which is a part of womanhood or femininity, and kind of how it all coalesces. So he doesn't dig deep because these are very like kind of short, pithy lectures, but it kind of just blew my mind hearing just that. I was like, wow, this is such a fascinating way that kind of reframes the film for me.
I feel, because now that I think about it, is it a metaphorical motherhood or is it an actual
Mm,
motherhood, a person coming out of your body as someone who is childless by choice, but has
mhm.
always had this idea that sometimes you mother someone without being the actual mother than them, whether it's like someone in your life, someone that comes across you, a pet, some even sometimes in a relationship where it's like codependent and needy, and you don't
Yep.
realize that you
Oh,
are mothering
yes.
the partner unknowingly. So I'm trying to see, how does Sue fall into that category? Do you think I'm
Mhm.
mothering the best part of me, or is it the child that I really wanted to have? Or is it sometimes that narcissistic pleasure of owning children, which to me, being a parent, sometimes to many people kind of feels like some people I feel like they just want to have kids because they just want to own another creature that they
Right.
invest in and think about like, yeah, in the future they will do this and this for us, or they will be better versions of ourselves.
Yes, yes, just this extension of themselves and kind of fulfilling your life, I guess, which is kind of gross because it's like your child is has their own personality and their own perspective and their own goals and dreams, and they're gonna go live their life. But yeah, no, I think that's really fascinating. And I think that, and I'm also child free too by choice. And so, but I also have a very conflicted relationship with motherhood. So it's so funny that you say that, that we both share that in common. I think that is a very much a metaphorical motherhood, but also it's interesting because when I was rewatching The Substance, I noticed, and it's something so minor, but I noticed Sue when she's having the interview with Dennis Quaid's really creepy agent or producer, and she says my schedule, and she's like, I have to be off every other week because I need to take care of my mother. And I don't know why I missed it. Like, it's such an obvious line, but I missed it the first time, that kind of motherhood connection. And so I think it is kind of playing out these motherhood themes because they each have to nurture and take care of the other, and they rely on each other. And even though constantly they're told and we're told they're one, what you do to one, you do to the other, they don't always feel that way. Like, they feel at odds and they feel different and they look different and they end up kind of diverging in what they want to do, and they get mad at each other for different things they do. And like, Elizabeth gets mad that Sue's not taking care of her body, and then or Elizabeth is mad at Sue for that, and then Sue turns and is also mad at Sue for doing the same thing but in different ways. So they're each mad at not taking care of respecting the contract and each other's bodies the way they think they should be doing. And so it is kind of these motherhood themes when they really should be nurturing each other and themselves. And it feels like that only happens once they become the monster. And which is so fascinating because, like thinking about Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, he's done so many lovely interviews talking about monsters and what they mean to him
Yeah,
and all of that, and thinking about, and monsters have such a queer codedness to them, like feeling like
exactly.
the other, feeling like the outsider, and how monsters can be so lovely. And so I do think it's fascinating that all of Elizabeth's fears end up kind of thrust in her face in this very extreme way. Like, she becomes very much like a stereotypical hag, and with her hunched body and losing hair and looking, quote unquote old. And then they become the monster and fuse together. But that's when they really end up nurturing each other and becoming a unit. And when they should have been nurturing each other all along and really nurturing yourself. And so I definitely think that it's playing with these motherhood themes, not just from Sue's birth from her spine and kind of this rebirth kind of way where they like pass out and then come back to life kind of. But then I think there are these other nurturing themes too.
I adore the idea that when they become the monster, it's as if when you give in to your monstrous side, you are free. You can
Hmm.
finally feel good. So this is part
Exactly.
of why I'm attracted to monstrous femininity. It's as if by reverting
Yes.
to your wild self, that the society and even people in a relationship with you and everything's cool, parents, like religious institutions, TV, like all these even awful, like women's programs that talk about, like etiquette and fashion and blah, blah, blah. It's as if they're telling you that you have to contain that inside you, never
Yeah.
letting it out, or else, oh my God, all hell will break loose. But some films makes it obvious. Like, let's even talk about Revenge. When Jen loses that sexy, beautiful, kind of like voluptuous, desirable girl, and she becomes this
Hmm.
person going into the cave, and the cave is a very metaphorical symbol.
Oh yeah.
So she goes into the cave and she goes through this um like metamorphosis of sorts where she becomes the killing machine. She becomes like the avenging angel of death, harboring, like fire and rain over them. So it feels like she again became her monstrous self, and that's what set her free. She wasn't
Yes.
like aiming for these desires of these men who actually hurt her so much and ruined her and
Hmm.
kind of like destroyed her out of their just evil needs to kind of like put her in a place that she didn't even want to go to. And now she became free when she became this monster just out there looking for blood. So the idea that female monstrosity is that scary, why do you think it is? Even to women, okay, I would definitely understand why is it scary for patriarchy, but for
Yeah.
women who become allies for patriarchy in a way.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of the part that is scary for a lot of women is the loss of control, the loss of what you know, the loss of what's maybe comfortable on one level. And but yeah, I 100% agree with you. Part of me is like, why would that be scary? Embrace that. Embrace what makes you different. Embrace what you know, is intense and weird and rageful about you. I have often thought of rage as I love seeing rage, especially women's rage depicted on screen. And I think it can be very much a catalyst for change. I very much think of rage as a way to protect yourself and to advocate for yourself. And it's always thought of as destructive, and it certainly can be. But I think it also can be destructive to forces that need to be destroyed. And there's a there's a reason why certain indigenous tribes will burn the land in order so that it grows anew again. And sometimes you have to destroy the old to make the new, So I definitely think rage is a part of that. But yeah, I think that can be scary um, for women, but I don't know if it should be, but I definitely think it is. But thinking about what you were saying about Jen, I love what you were saying about how she has to become a monster to set herself free. And something I noticed on this rewatch of Revenge is so I'm always, and I know a lot of people are, I'm obsessed with her pink star earrings because they're so
Yes.
cute and they're such a great visual signifier. But something I realized while watching them is they reminded me, and there's also star earrings that Sue wears in
Yes.
Substance, which I think is a great through line. I'm sure it was intentional, but something I realized while watching it is that those star earrings reminded me of the pink heart earrings that Jennifer wears in Jennifer's body, and she becomes the monster as well, and also is kind of rallying against gross men and boys, rallying against
Yes.
patriarchy. But then also, when I was reading an interview, all of these like disparate thoughts are coming together. When I was reading an interview with Farja, she was talking about all of her different influences for Revenge and for the Substance. And so I don't know which one she was referencing when she was talking about this. I think she was talking about Revenge, but she was saying something about the Lolita. Oh yeah, it was because she was saying the Lolita-esque quality of what Jen looks like in the beginning, kind of that
It's true.
stereotypical, like, you know, sex siren nymphette, quote unquote. But I realized, oh yeah, the in Stanley Kubrick's poster of Lolita, she's wearing these heart sunglasses, which are like the heart earrings that Jennifer wears, which are like the star earrings. So there's this through line of pushing back against this image of sexuality and becoming and embracing monstrosity in order to transform yourself and, like you said, to be free, which I love. That's
I agree with these allegories, all of them. And I feel like, seriously, this is the best conversation ever. I feel like when
I
we were
agree.
talking about that monstrous transformation, and this is the only time that Elizabeth and Sue find the harmony, and Elizabeth even feels good. I remember the Let Go song from Frozen, where I feel like it was the first
Yes.
queer-coded character ever to be on Disney. And the idea of her kind of like feeling always being pushed, always. I feel like this was like a very triumphant moment for me when you were always taught that, well, you have a great part of you, show it to the world. Why are you being this? Why are you being this? Hide this, don't show, don't tell, don't talk like that, don't say these crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
And then a moment
Mm-hmm.
happens and all breaks loose and something comes out of you that you know you will never bring back again. So her powers emerge and she feels like, well, let them know. So, and
Yep.
she starts unleashing her powers all over and she sings beautiful. I remember watching this song first time and crying next to my sister. My
Yes.
sister looking at me and telling me, I feel like she's you. And this made me realize, like, oh my God, these moments where you just have a part of you that you feel is real, but others might not like it. And then you get it out. And that part when it's out, you just feel like fuck it, I mean, I don't
Hmm.
give a shit. I'm so glad this is out, even if people will love me less. And I feel like this is
Hmm.
the idea of people loving you. Like you could always see Sue catering to men, being like cutesy and kind of like having the silly giggle, or like
Yep.
having putting her finger in her mouth and kind of like doing all the mannerisms that she knows men would adore. And same goes for the beginning
Right.
of Revenge when she's like catering to that male gaze. And then you
Yep.
realize that the moment all of that falls apart. So this is why I feel like it's just a liberating moment. The idea of losing that performance or that performative sexuality, that performative beauty, and finally becoming yourself
Yes.
is probably a very liberating moment that women don't realize until they go through it or they undergo it. So it just felt like very beautiful, whether in Revenge or in The Substance, and totally reminded me of, like Let It Go from Frozen.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that because I love Frozen. It's one of my favorites.
Me
I love
too.
Elsa.
I love her.
I'm obsessed with finding queer-coded characters in Disney.
Me too. Me too, by the way.
I love it.
100%.
And
We
there's
should
so
have an
many of them.
episode.
Yeah,
Yes, we
I
should
know.
have an
Oh,
episode dedicated to that.
we need to do
Yes.
it. We need to do it. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. I'm obsessed. But yeah, no, I sobbed uncontrollably watching Elsa sing Let It Go because that is such a powerful thing because there is that queer level of being a queer woman and never feeling like fitting in anywhere because I'm bisexual, so I don't feel like I fit in necessarily with all queer groups, but then I don't fit in with straight group. Like, I feel like sometimes there is no place for me. And then also feeling like I've always been really loud, really boisterous, really bubbly, really opinionated, woman. And even when I was a kid, I was that way. And I was told, you have to be quiet, you have to tone it down, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that. And always being like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. But then I feel like sometimes, and I think that's great, but then it also is like sometimes you get people who don't like that and then you lose friendships or lose relationships and that's heartbreaking too, but at the end of the day you have to be yourself in all your full glory, whether or not people like you, because I feel like if you're closed off, if you're kind of doing this performativity where you're not fully yourself, do people really love you or like you, or do they just love and like the performative version of you, the fake version, the not fully real version of you? And so I think it's so important to really let down as much as you can your guard, be yourself, let it all out. There is such power in that. I know I keep saying power, but there is. It's so
We need
incredible.
to
And
say power more often. Trust me, Megan. So
yes,
yes,
yes.
power, power to power.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, but I think that's why Elsa, whether kids realize it or not, I think that's why Elsa resonates so much with so many children and adults too, because it's such an incredible message of, you can't keep being what other people want you to be. You have to be yourself. You have to be true to yourself. And you can't be performing for others. And whether that's, being obedient or docile or looking young, looking pretty, being kind and nice. And I think back to that scene in Revenge where Jen is she's just dancing with her boyfriend's friends and she's just like being fun and silly and that's all she's taking it as. But the next day when he's gone and she's talking to the creepy slimy guy, and you immediately see her demeanor change when he's like, oh, he's gone, he'll be gone all morning, and she knows she's unsafe, but she's still trying to be polite as possible because that's what women do around creepy men is we have
Exactly.
to pretend and be nice so in order to stay safe. And so it's that I think that element too makes it so freeing that she lets all that go and unleashes her, violent emotions. It's great.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, I want to talk about the makeup department. The idea of turning those beauty queens into kind of like deformed forms of them, because
Yeah.
you were talking beautifully about Jen and the makeup and the blood, the cakey blood, how her hair even looks different. And
Mm.
then you have Sue and her teeth falling, and you have she's losing her. So,
Oh
what do
yeah.
you think about Coralie Farjah's use of those makeup elements, kind of like showing the decay in as much grotesque and gross out manner ever, and very, very gory in a way?
I love it. I love it. Give me more gore. I think it's incredible. I love that she uses practical effects as much as she does. I think that is great. I think makeup departments are phen phenomenal. They're like their artistry just kind of leaves me speechless because it's so what people are able to do is so incredible. And I love that she does that. And you really get to see that to I mean, you see that obviously in Revenge too, but you really see that to its full effect. And like Demi Moore undergoing like I think like 6 hours or something of makeup and like hearing about the makeup and the prosthetics and all of it that was done for both Elizabeth and Sue is just kind of incredible. And I love that. And I love that we're seeing these practical effects. I love that we're seeing this artistry. I also think there's something to be said for something real, which I know sounds weird because we're talking about prosthetics, but I think real watching real effects as opposed to CGI is there's something special in it. And almost like we recognize when something is more real, it feels more real, it feels more tangible. And I love that. It also very much, I think, pays homage to like horror, like body horror. Like I know she's influenced by John Carpenter's The Thing, and it very much feels like it pays homage to that as well, like in the prosthetics and the makeup that were used in that film. But as far as the decay goes, again, I think that's so like losing teeth is like losing hair and losing teeth are the things that like, ugh, like
It
there's so
scares me.
like
It scares me so
oh
much
my
thinking
God,
about it.
me too, me
Exactly.
too. It's
And
so
nails.
like
Like if I ever see someone
oh,
losing a nail,
oh, yeah.
oh my
Losing a
God,
nail.
no, get
Yeah.
them out of my
Yeah.
face. I can't. Yes,
Oh, yeah. Mine is also like punctured eyes. Like, oh, oh,
exactly. Or
yeah. It's
like
so,
when someone has like something very tiny kind of like stuck in their skin and they have to take it out, and it's the more you take it out, the more it goes inside. I was like, "Ugh, no,
yeah,
stop it."
yeah.
Yes. Oh my
No, I
God. A lot
know.
of
It's,
those cringe
oh,
moments
yeah.
that I
Oh,
love and just
oh,
hide my eyes.
they're in both films. But yeah, no, but I love that. I think that's important to show because bodies are gross and they are. They do weird, wet, gross, gooey things. And, but I love
Beyond your
that she
control sometimes. Exactly.
exactly. And I love that she's showing that. And it's interesting because she's not just doing grotesque things to the women characters because the men are gross too. Like I think about the guy who steps on the shard of glass in Revenge and then has to like dig it out with his foot.
And the
And
shrimp
that's so
scene
gross.
with Dennis Quaid, it's the
Oh God,
grossest. It's grosser
the
than the monster
grossest.
at the end. I'm sorry, it's the
I think
worst
it's the worst. It is the worst scene
ever.
by far. It is so disgusting. It's funny, like I'm watching Revenge and the guy's foot, the shard of glass, and I'm fine. And I remember seeing in the theater and people like the collective like, ugh, and I was fine watching it, and I'm kind of like like kind of giggling. And then I see that shrimp scene and I'm like, oh my God. And I had to like turn away because I'm like, this is so gross.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
couldn't. I
yeah.
couldn't continue watching because it
It's
was
so
like so gross
gross.
out. Exactly.
Yeah, it's so gross. It's awful. But yeah, no, but I love that she's showing this. I love that it's pushing back on what we normally see in films. That's great.
Okay,
And
so I
the blood and the
yes,
climax. I'm obsessed with it in the
gallons and
theater.
gallons of blood. Yes,
Gallons of blood. And it's funny because there's also, again, in Revenge, there's so much blood and the blood slipping around, like when Jen and her boyfriend are like running around chasing each other and they're slipping. Like reading about the behind the scenes of that was fascinating because that was something that Farjad didn't realize was that the blood was going to be so sticky and everybody was going to be sticking to it, and that caused logistical problems and choreography problems because she had like choreographed everything like perfect. and that threw a wrench in it. So that was fascinating. But then you have, gallons and gallons of blood in the theater, the climax of the substance, and I loved it. And I think it's incredible. And again, because it feels so out of control and it's embracing that chaos and that carnage. And
And
I
kind
just,
of
I think,
reminds me of menstruation too. Like the overflow of
yes,
it, yes. When it's sometimes
yes,
it's out of control, when your period surprises
yes,
you, it
yeah,
totally like when sometimes
yeah,
it's too much or sometimes it's too little, so you kind of war. But that
yeah,
overpour, it's I think it's
yeah,
that period blood kind of like in your
yeah,
face,
yes,
going
yes,
in rain.
yes. And it's funny because I'm always excited when we see a period scene in a
Me
film.
too.
I love it. I'm like, we need more period blood. We need to see it more. And it's funny that you say that because I had the same experience watching the theater scene. Because again, talking about perimenopause, my periods have been out of control and I have been bleeding like a this feels like so much TMI, but that's okay. We're doing it. There's been so much blood that has come out of me sometimes. And I'm like,
Yes.
I didn't even know my body could produce that much blood. And so and I know Farja, she's in her mid to late 40s. So we're like, I'm like, she has to be feeling like similarly. So I'm like, I think that was very much an intentional choice.
Oh my God. Since you mentioned
Like
one.
to be reminiscent of it. I don't think it's an accident that we're thinking of that.
No, no, no. Because, okay, for me, the idea of menstruation is always a puzzle because for me, it has never been consistent. I've always had irregular ones because I have, like a condition
Oh,
where
okay.
it is very irregular. So for me, it's always conflicting. Like it always surprises me. It always comes at times that are unexpected for me. Sometimes it's a downpour and sometimes it's just a few drops. So the idea of wanting more about it, to see it, it makes me realize that my body is surprising me, my reproductive system is surprising me, my poor ovaries, like my uterus, all these things surprise me on all kinds of occasions. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea of seeing that metaphorically or in your face on screen is always
Yeah.
like something to celebrate for me. So I totally get what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
girl. There's been a lot of
Yeah.
us
I
in
mean,
this episode, but I'm happy because
oh my God, so much. I love it.
yeah, because these films make us like self-reflect. And as women, I think we are supposed to do that. And you don't get to do that with the film bros because they'll be like, So yeah, you're finally having it on your own terms. And you're just happy because you would never have that conversation about the substance with your, like dude guy on the dude podcast. So yeah, I just love that.
You're absolutely right. I know. So my best friend and my roommate is a guy, and I tell him a lot about my periods, and he's very lovely. He's like, okay, okay, but I'm like, I don't care. You need to know about this. You need to know about women's
Exactly. We need to
bodies. You
educate
need to
them.
know about
Yes.
menstruation. Yes, it's
Hmm.
very important. So yeah, so no, I very much talk about it, but I know, like, yeah, like I see like my dude friends, their eyes like glaze over. Like the minute I mention like menstruation, like on a podcast show, they're like, ooh, like they go like, get all pale and don't want to talk about it. But no, it's important. It's a part of life. It is a part of life for half the population. So
Exactly.
it's important to discuss. But yeah, but it is something, and it's funny because I have always been so regular in my periods, like clockwork, like always
This is
like,
why perimenopause kind of like surprised you because you were the opposite of
yes,
me. I feel like it's not going to surprise me because I
yes.
feel like, oh my God, I've been like this since I was a
You'll
teen.
be prepared. Yeah, you've been preparing your whole life. Yeah, whereas it like totally blindsided me, and I'm like, "Where's my period? Why isn't it coming?" And then, oh, now I'm gonna bleed heavily for like 2 weeks. What's going on? And it's like, it's so weird. But that's what was the most unnerving, was that I could rely on my body. I could rely on it being like clockwork. Like I knew I knew how many tampons I needed. I knew how many days it was going to be. I knew how many, like when the next one was going to be. And now it's like, it's a
Chaos.
crapshoot. It's chaos. I have
Yes.
no idea when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, how much it's going to happen. And so, yeah, that chaos is really, it's been hard to embrace. But I think it's kind of been a good lesson. Weirdly, if I can glean anything from it, it's been a good lesson to embrace chaos more. I think that's
Yes. Okay. Wow. what I want to know from you is what do you think of her casting choices for the three leads? Matilda Lutz in Revenge, and you have Margaret Qualley and Demi in Substance.
I Tilda Lutz. I had never seen her before in
Me
anything.
too. Me
And
too.
now
She
I
was a
want to see her in
surprise.
everything. Yeah, she was such a surprise. And the fact that she gave such an incredible performance, mostly wordlessly, but with saying so much in her very expressive face and her physicality, I'm like, this is incredible. And so I love her. And, Margaret Qualley, I have to be honest, I have never liked her. I never thought she was a good actress. I never liked her. I've seen her in many things and I either outright disliked her or thought
Yeah.
she was whatever. I think she's incredible in this. I don't think she's ever been better.
Yes.
I think she's so good in this. And
100%.
what a pleasant surprise because I had these preconceived notions because I didn't like her.
Yes.
And then Demi Moore, I love Demi Moore. I think Demi Moore is an incredible actress with such longevity. And, but I haven't seen her in such a long time in something really like in a really amazing, juicy role. And so to see her here in a role that is not only front and center, but that is so visceral and so raw and so vulnerable, and to see her really harness and channel her rage in a phenomenal capacity and to vacillate between all these emotions of shame and disgust and hatred for herself and her body as the character of Elizabeth, and but also have this tremendous vulnerability and to really lay it all bare, literally with her body as well as metaphorically with her emotions. I think that's incredible. That scene, and I know everybody talks about it, but that scene in the bathroom in the mirror is shocking for how incredible her acting is. It is heartbreaking. It is anger inducing. It's phenomenal. It is such an incredible scene.
And
It's something to
relatable.
behold.
And very
Yes.
relatable, even if
Yes.
different. But how many times have you looked at yourself and felt like, oh my God, I remember that I didn't know how to get the foundation shade right. And it took
Oh,
me
yep.
a long time. But at the end, I kind of like got so enraged that I got my makeup remover and removed it altogether and went out. And I was going out with my sister and her friends. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
terrible night for me. I
Oh
really didn't want to be there. So for me, that scene, oh my God, that was so relatable. And just
no.
it was
Right?
wonderful. She played it wonderfully.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes. Yes. And she's tapping into all those various emotions that you feel like, oh, I'm gonna put on some makeup and be hopeful and like maybe I'll look the way I want. And then you're like you're so fucking pissed that you're like, what the hell? This doesn't look the way I want it to. It doesn't look right. And then really you're saying like you're not right. And
Or you're
oh,
not
anyway,
enough, which is
you're not
always wrong.
enough.
Exactly.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
always wrong. Exactly. This is the thing. This is the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like a bottomless pit of despair that like, you're not enough, you know. And I feel like the other side of that is you're too much, because really you're too much. You're still saying you're not enough because you're not enough in the right way. So, ugh, yes, love it. So I love the casting. I think it's incredible.
Okay, Megan, because you're like a research whiz in the podcast, and you always have like extra notes. Like I feel like every episode we're like, "Hey guys, we're wrapping," and then Megan is like, "Hey guys, I have still some notes that I need to say."
I know. I'm
We
feeling kind of
missed.
bad about that. I'm sorry.
No, it's actually I love this part where you feel like
Oh,
when
okay.
you're a student and we're all in class and we're like, "Hey, the lesson is over," and then you raise your hand, but I have more to say.
Wait, there's more. There's
We
more
want to
questions. More
kill
things.
Megan. How about put my
I
legs
know.
so that she trips and falls? Oh, sorry.
Whoopsies.
So this is
Sometimes
why
I get excited. I get excited reading and researching.
I love that about you so much. Such a
Oh, thank you.
refreshing part of you. So is there anything that we missed? Because I don't want to miss any Meganness out of the
Oh,
analysis.
funny enough, I
See?
don't think so. I
I
don't think
milked you
so.
dry. I
I
know my
know.
skills. Who do you think you're dealing with, girl?
Yeah, let me just take a quick, but I really don't think so. I think
I
we
don't
talked
think so
about
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about violence. We talked about that. We talked about that.
Don't I know, girl?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm a
No,
pro. I
I
swear
know
we
you are.
juiced these two movies. Like seriously, there's nothing left
I
for
know.
anyone.
I feel like you were inside my mind, like in my
I
mind.
am inside your mind. Beware of me, Meg.
Yeah, no, but
Okay.
yeah. I know it's kind of weird because I always feel like I have more to say, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, I still could talk more about this, but
Because I
no, we went
love
through all my
letting
notes. Yeah,
because I just love letting, like my my co-hosts talk because I feel like yeah, because there's always yeah, there's a lot of me, but there's also less of me because I feel like yes, I want you to talk, talk, talk until there's nothing left. This is why.
until you're talked out. Yeah, but the funny thing is, I still think we probably could talk more. Like, I think that's what's so fascinating about her films is that they seem
There's always
so,
room for more.
yes, they seem so, I know I said it before, but they seem so obvious, but there really are so many
No,
layers.
they're
There's so
very
much
deep.
happening.
Exactly.
Yes, yes,
And maybe when we
yes.
finish the episode, we'll go to sleep and we're like, wait, I feel like there's more that I needed to say. Totally get this. And we will get this, definitely. But this is because of the depth of her work and how it
Yes.
tackles such intense, difficult subjects. And in a
Hmm.
way that leaves it a lot open for interpretation, like multiple interpretations.
Yes.
So it totally makes sense what you're saying.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree. Yeah.
Girl,
No, oh, yeah.
no, tell me first. Yes. So,
No, I was thinking about it. I was like, I think we already talked about it, but the only other thing, because we talked about the Phoenix in the Phoenix imagery and rising um, from the dead in Revenge, but there's also very much like when she dies the first time, there's like, it's kind of like a very religious crucifixion scene.
yes.
And there's that kind of, coming back in that way too, like
Yeah,
with,
the resurrection.
you know,
Uh-huh.
yeah, exactly. And then, but it also is very much in the substance too, so anyway, I'm just, yeah, but we kind of did touch on that too, but yeah, but I'm thinking about that as well, like what does it mean to have a resurrection, like what does it mean to come back from the dead? And
Especially
it's
for a
funny.
woman. Okay, so what do you think it
Yes.
means for a
Well,
woman?
yeah, so I don't know. I think I'm still sussing it out, but it does tie into back to Barbara Creed because I always come back to research. It goes back to the monstrous feminine because
Hmm.
that's one of I think that's one of her new. She's amended. She had when she first did this research about the monstrous feminine, she had like these 7 stages, and then she came out and added some more based on newer films. And one of them I think is like the zombie, it's like an avenging angel, like she didn't say a zombie but some kind of like resurrected avenging angel,
Yes,
and that very much is what Jen is,
this
but
is
also in a,
Jen.
yeah, but in a weird way I feel like is that also what Elizabeth and Sue are, because they
Have
both kind of
become,
go through, yeah, because they become one but they also have these like mini deaths like when they're unconscious and they're
yeah.
totally reliant on the other, so they keep coming back to life. So yeah, so anyway, I think that's my very last thought. But
Final
yeah,
thoughts.
thinking about, I know, but thinking about, yeah, what does it mean? What does it mean for a woman to come back from the dead? I mean, I guess it shows our
Because I feel
resiliency.
because I feel like the resurrection religious theme is always reserved for, like prophets or gods or, it's
Yes.
always male centric. But what does it
Yes.
mean for a woman? Is it the idea that maybe you go through, let's say, something as intense as labor or, like as intense physical pain,
Oh,
and then you are born, or
yeah.
you have a nervous breakdown and you think you are not going back on your feet, but then you do, or you
Wow.
have like something very intense, like a tragedy or a chaos, but then you have to go and take care of things, take care of a family, take care of the affairs. So, because we were talking to one of our great friends and she was comparing like a difficult situation in her life with her ex-partner where he took a leave of absence and kind of like took 2 days or 2 weeks to go to, like a psychiatric ward or something to just
Yep.
because it was too much for him, a particular situation they had. But she had to wake up the next day, even though she is going through the same situation because she had kids, she had responsibilities. She didn't have the luxury, and she used that term, or the privilege to do this, to kind of like
Yeah.
cut herself out of the world, go check herself into, like a rehabilitation center or whatever. She didn't have
Hmm.
that luxury, so she had to go through the same tragedy as him, but then go and take care of the kids, take care of business, take care of responsibilities. So what does a resurrection mean for a woman? This is always what I'm thinking about, especially I feel like with the load and with the all the responsibilities being thrown on women, that you have to take care of, let's say either your family or yourself, or if you have kids or whatever, because there's always that pressure that you have to take more while the man takes care of himself, full stop.
Yep. Yep. No, you're right. And everything's catered to men in our society. Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent observation. I think there's also something to the because it is a religiosity, you know, metaphor, but
Mhm.
also it transcends that because we see that imagery so much in so many films
Yeah,
that are alluding to religion, but maybe aren't necessarily overtly about religion. But there's something to be said about this kind of power to come back
yeah.
and that is reserved for men. And it's funny because Farjah said in an interview that this is going out there but then coming back, the reason that Elizabeth has a yellow coat, that vibrant, vivid yellow coat, is so she would look kind of like a superhero. And I was like, huh, that's weird. That's interesting. But then that's exactly what happens to Jen is that she comes back and is resurrected like a kind of religious figure, but also kind of like a superhero because
Superhero. Hmm.
yeah, because so often like looking at like Joseph Campbell's like stages of like the
Hmm.
hero's
The
journey.
year's journey.
And yeah, and like so often there's like some kind of death or some kind of, and then a rebirth from that death. And so very much that's what Jen is going through. And then also Elizabeth and Sue are kind of going through that too. But yeah, it is very much I think your friend, I mean, I don't know them obviously, but I think they're right. Like it is a luxury to take the time off and men have different advantages and privileges than women have. And there's different expectations about what women are supposed to do for themselves and for their families and for others. So, yeah. But it's so often we don't see in film and in storytelling women as
Resurrection for
heroes.
women. And I'm telling you why too, because
Yes.
resurrection scene
Yes.
for a man, when you see RoboCop or when you see Superman or when you see
Yes.
whatever, it's celebrated. He's a hero. This is a scene. But for
Yep.
women, we don't celebrate. It's as if it's expected. You know what? You are a woman, you go through things
Yep.
like, having menstruation, and then you give birth, and then you have, menopause, and you have all these horrific things, and you're still there. You know what I mean? And you
Yep.
are the one who is subjected to physical abuse more and things like that. So you are
Hmm.
expected to be resurrected. But men, oh, let's applaud them. Wow, look at him. This
Oh
is
my
what I
God.
feel. This is what I feel like it's a cause for
Yes.
celebration where it's a man. But when it's a woman, it's as if people are like, oh yeah, it's another day in the office for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think men have such a low bar and what they're supposed to be. Like, I feel like if a woman is in a relationship with a man, they can do the most basic bare minimum thing. And it's like, oh, he's the nicest guy. He's the greatest. Oh my God. Same with like if a guy has his kids and is like in the park and it's like, oh my God, he's the greatest father. It's so incredible. Whereas if a
Exactly.
woman's doing the exact same thing, it's like, oh, whatever. Because women are expected to do these things. And when men just have the bare minimum and they get accolades and showered with praise and women don't, and there's so many greater expectations on us, which is just absurd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is why
Yeah.
resurrection for you is different from a resurrection for a guy, where it's like he's always
Yes.
going to be the hero and it's going to be this magnificent scene where he's being, like from the ashes, coming from the ashes. So totally agree. Totally agree.
Yep. Yep. But I think that's another reason why these films are so important and so potent and speak to us so deeply.
Yes. It's so effective.
Ah, yes. Ah, love them.
What is next for Megan? What is Megan doing next?
What am I doing next? Oh, I'm going to I do my weekly show, Spoiler Piece Theater. I do that every week with my co-hosts. And then I'm also going to be doing another review episode for In Session Film. Um, yeah. And then I'm
Yay.
also in the midst of I do another podcast on slasher films in the 80s, and that's in the midst of being released now too. So that's all.
That's all, folks. Yes, but
Yes.
that's like so good, girl. I mean, we're always happy when you're on the main show, seriously, because you are taking
Aw,
the responsibility of reviewing all these new films. So yeah, so proud of you.
thank you. Thank you.
Megan, it was a pleasure juicing you, squeezing you dry out of your thoughts. I feel very honored. Honestly, I'm proud of myself for doing this. Making you run out of thoughts, girl. I mean, what an accomplishment on the J part.
Oh my God, you're so sweet. You are the most incredible interviewer. And I've seen your interviews. I always love watching them. They're so fantastic. And you always have these incredibly thoughtful, insightful questions that I feel like other people are not asking, but should be. It's like, why isn't everybody asking this? So, no, this was utterly my delight and pleasure. And this was just so much fun. And I love you. I love talking.
I love you too. Thanks, Megan. This was the best. Seriously. What an energy that we had.